Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. So in today's video, we'll be talking about the basics of trigonometric functions. So today we're focusing on right angle triangles, so let's learn more about its sides. So in the beginning, considering this is theta, then the side opposite to it is called the opposite, the side next to it is called the adjacent, and the longest side is called the hypotenuse. So there are 6 trigonometric functions, 3 are primary and the other 3 can be derived from them. The main trigonometric functions are sine, cosine, and tangent. Each function represents a relationship between two sides of a triangle as the following. Sine theta equals the opposite over the hypotenuse, cosine theta equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and finally tan theta equals the opposite over the adjacent. You can easily memorize these formulas by the sentence SOH CAH TOA, which stands for sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and finally tan is the opposite over the adjacent. So there are angles that you need to memorize because they often come as standardized tests, where you can't have access to a calculator, which are 0, 30, 45, 60, and 90, and you can easily remember them using this table. So starting off with sine, we're going to start off with square root of 0, square root of 1, square root of 2, square root of 3, and finally square root of 4. Next, we're going to divide all the digits by 2, as you can see. And for cosine, we're going to do the same thing, but in the exact opposite direction. So we're going to start off with square root of 4, then we're going to go with square root of 3, square root of 2, square root of 1, and finally square root of 0. Next, we're going to divide the numbers by 2, just how we did in the sine function. As for the tan, there is no specific pattern like the sine and cosine. So what we're going to do is that tangent actually equals sine divided by cosine. So what we're going to do is divide the values we got for sine over the values we got for cosine. By that, we get that tangent 0 is 0, tangent 30 is square root of 3 over 3, tangent 45 is 1, tangent 60 is square root of 3, and tangent 90 is undefined because we're dividing by 0. Memorizing the values in this table will help you a lot, since they'll make you solve questions related to these angles faster and without the use of any calculator. To make sure that we fully understand the concept, we're going to do some practice. The first question asks for the value of cosine theta. Cosine equals the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. As we see in this triangle, the adjacent, which is the side next to theta, is x. So to find x, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. So x equals the square root of 10 squared minus 6 squared, which will equal to the square root of 100 minus 36. That will equal to the square root of 46, which is 8. So now we know that the adjacent of this triangle equals to 8. All what we have to do is substitute in the formula. 8 divided by 10, and by simplifying the fraction, we get 4 divided by 5. And that's by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 2. The second question asks for the value of tangent theta. Tangent is the opposite divided by the adjacent. In this triangle, we have the opposite as 6 and the adjacent as 8, as we found in the previous question. So we're just going to substitute 6 divided by 8, simplifying the fraction by dividing 2, both the numerator and the denominator. We're going to get 3 over 4. Next, we have the 3 trigonometric functions that are derived from the primary functions. First of all is cosecant, second, secant, and finally the cotangent. So cosecant is basically the reciprocal of sine, which will equal to the hypotenuse over the opposite. How did we get that? Simply 1 over sine is 1 over opposite over hypotenuse, and by simplifying this fraction, we get the hypotenuse over the opposite. And the same thing applies for the other functions. And as you can see, secant is the reciprocal of cosine, while cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. And to not mix up between the functions, remember that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, secant is the reciprocal of cosine, that sine starts with an s, so its reciprocal starts with a c, while cosine starts with a c and its reciprocal starts with an s. and cotangent is just the reciprocal of tangent. It's not very important to memorize these functions since, as we mentioned, they are the reciprocal of the primary ones. So now let's do some practice. First question asks for the cosecant of theta. As we can see here, we have all the sides of a triangle. So can you guess what cosecant of theta stands for? Right. Cosecant of theta is 1 over sine. So that will equal to the hypotenuse over the opposites. So the hypotenuse here is 26. The opposite here is 10. And by substituting in the formula, we get 26 over 10. Simplify that by dividing by 2, we'll get 13 over 5. Now for the next question, it asks for the secant of theta. So the secant is 1 over cosine. Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, so this will equal to the hypotenuse over the adjacent. The hypotenuse here is 26, as you said, and the adjacent is 24, so this will simplify to 13 over 12 by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 2. That's it for now. I hope you found the video very helpful and easy and you fully understood the concept. In the next videos, we'll get to know more about trigonometry, so stay tuned.